My wife abandoned me with a note and 2 kids for a rich man. 6 years later, she showed up at my boss's dinner screaming I was her husband. But my new wife did something they never saw coming. I'm 38 years old. I work in project management for a tech company, and after what happened last week with my ex showing up at the dinner with my boss, I guess I need to tell this whole story from the beginning, because honestly, I still can't believe someone has the nerve to do what she did. I should start with Michelle, my ex-wife. Well, technically, we've been divorced for like 6.5 years now. But when we got married, I was 24 and she was 23. And at first, everything was normal, like any young marriage that's trying to build something together. We had Alexander when I was 26, and then Lily 4 years later, and during those first years, everything seemed to be fine, or at least that's what I thought. Because turns out Michelle had completely different plans for her life that didn't exactly include being a mother of 2 kids in a middle-class neighborhood. Things started to change when Alexander was like 10 years old and Lily was 6. Michelle began hanging out with Astorio, group of friends who, how do I put this, had a lifestyle quite a bit more elevated than ours, like those women who have lunch at expensive restaurants on Tuesdays and go shopping like it's an Olympic sport. At first, I didn't worry too much. Honestly, I thought it was good that she had friends and was getting out a bit. But then the credit card bills started arriving, and I'd sit there looking at the numbers thinking, at what point did we spend $3,000 in 1 month on clothes? And when I'd ask her, Michelle would tell me she needed to look good, that she couldn't go around looking like just anybody when she went out with her friends. And I'd try to explain that we had 2 kids, a mortgage, bills to pay, but it was like talking to a wall. Each month was worse. $5,000, then $7,000, and I was working more and more hours trying to cover everything, while she kept buying designer purses and shoes that cost more than our 3-month electric bill. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, but I guess I didn't want to see them or thought it was a phase that would pass. Michelle spent less and less time at home, always had some lunch or some meeting with her friends, and the kids started asking me where mommy was when they got home from school, and I was the one helping them with homework and making dinner. One day I came home from work. It was a normal Tuesday, like 3 in the afternoon because I'd left early to take Lily to the dentist, and the house was empty. Like empty, empty. And there was a note on the kitchen table. A note. Can you believe it? After 12 years of marriage and 2 kids, this woman left me a note. I read it like 5 times because I couldn't process what it said. Basically, it was that she had met someone who could give her the life she deserved, that she needed time for herself, and that she'd come back in a few years when things settled down. I'll come back in a few years, literally. That's how she wrote it. Like she'd gone to buy bread and not like she was abandoning her children. Alexander was 12 years old at that point, and Lily was 8, and I had to sit down with them that night and explain that mommy had left. And the confused look on Lily's face asking me when she was coming back broke my heart into pieces. Alexander didn't say anything. He just went to his room and closed the door, and I stayed there in the living room feeling like someone had knocked all the air out of my lungs. The following months were, I don't even know how to describe them, like a blur of trying to survive day by day. I worked my normal 8-hour shift, then had a second job on weekends at an electronics store, and in between tried to be both dad and mom at the same time. I cut all the expenses I could, no cable, no eating out, basic grocery shopping, and even then the debts Michelle had left were drowning me. About 4 months after she left, my lawyer told me I needed to make difficult decisions, and the most difficult was putting the house up for sale. That house where we'd lived since Alexander was born, where the tree in the yard was, that Lily learned to climb, but I simply couldn't maintain it with the debts and trying to raise 2 kids alone. We sold in about 3 months, and with the money that was left after paying off all the credit cards Michelle had maxed out, I managed to scrape together enough for a deposit on a smaller house in a town like an hour from where we lived. The divorce was finalized without drama because Michelle didn't even show up to the hearings. She signed the papers they sent her by mail from who knows where, and that was it. I got full custody, which was easy considering she had literally abandoned the children, and we started over in this 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood where the kids could walk to school. Life wasn't easy those first 2 years after the move, but it wasn't terrible either, you know what I mean? Alexander became quieter, more serious for his age, helping me with Lily and with household things without me asking him to. Lily had some problems at school at first, like separation anxiety and grades dropping, but with therapy and a lot of time together, she started to improve. I kept working a lot, but managed to quit the second job after like a year. And little by little, we started building something that felt like stability. There was a bookstore in town, one of those independent ones that barely exist anymore. And I'd go on Saturday mornings because I liked to have a coffee and read for a while before the kids woke up. That's where I met Samantha. Samantha worked at the bookstore on weekends while finishing her master's in literature. And, I don't know. We started talking about books and one thing led to another. And after like 3 months of casual encounters in the fiction section, I finally asked for her number. It was weird to date someone again. I'm not going to lie, because I'd been like 3 years of just me and the kids, and the idea of bringing someone else into our lives scared me. But Samantha is amazing, super calm and drama-free, never pushed to meet the kids quickly or anything like that. We dated for almost a year before she met Alexander and Lily, and when it finally happened, it was on a super casual picnic day at the park, nothing forced or awkward. The kids accepted her in a way that surprised me, especially Alexander, who by that point was like 15, and I thought he was going to be all resistant and protective. But I think he saw that I was happier, and that Samantha wasn't trying to replace anyone or play at being their mom. Lily took a bit longer to open up, but eventually started going to Samantha for help with girl things that I honestly didn't even know where to begin handling. We got married when we'd been dating for 2 years. A small ceremony in the backyard of the house with the kids there and some close friends, nothing ostentatious or dramatic, just something nice and simple that felt right. Life with Samantha was, let's say, healing for all of us. She never tried to erase Michelle from the equation or pretend she didn't exist, but she didn't elevate her to any pedestal either. The kids called her by her name, and that was fine. Nobody was playing Perfect House or pretending we were a TV show family. We were simply 4 people who had decided to build something together after life had kicked us around a bit. Alexander was in his senior year of high school and applying to colleges. Lily was in middle school and on the volleyball team, and I'd gotten a promotion at work that finally gave us a bit of financial breathing room. Everything was, good, stable, normal in the good sense of the word. And then, 6 years after Michelle took off with her dramatic note, my phone rang on a Tuesday night. I was helping Lily with a science project at the dining room table, and Samantha was making dinner, and when I saw it was an unknown number, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. It was Michelle, and the first words that came out of her mouth were, "Who the hell is living in my house?" Not a hello, not a how are the kids. Literally started yelling at me that she'd gone to the house. Our old house, obviously. And there were strange people there. I told her, "Michelle, that house was sold like 5 years ago." And she went silent for 2 seconds before starting to yell again, asking how I dared to sell her house without her permission. Her house. Can you believe it? The house that she had helped put at risk of foreclosure with her out-of-control spending. I tried to stay calm and explain that we were divorced, that I had full custody of the kids, and that I'd rebuilt my life. She went quiet for a moment, and then asked, "Divorced? When did that happen?" And I literally had to take a deep breath not to explode, because this woman had signed the divorce papers, had sent them back, but apparently hadn't registered in her brain what they meant. I told her it had been 6 years, that she'd signed everything, that she'd abandoned our children, and that I honestly didn't understand what she expected to happen. She told me I'd promised to wait for her. And I was like, what? In what parallel universe did I promise that? She insisted that in her note, she'd said she'd come back in a few years, and that I should have waited for her. Then I dropped on her that I'd remarried, and the silence on the other end of the line was so long I thought she'd hung up. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different, like cold and calculating, and she accused me of having been unfaithful, of having cheated on her while she was away, as if she'd been on a business trip and not abandoning her family for some guy with money. I told her I didn't owe her any explanation, that she had no right to know anything about my life, and she demanded I give her my new address immediately. Obviously, I told her no, that I had no intention of telling her where we lived, and she threatened to call the police and report me for kidnapping her children. Kidnapping the children she'd abandoned 6 years earlier. The logic was impressive. I hung up and sat there with the phone in my hand, feeling like I'd just been run over by a truck. Samantha saw my face and knew immediately something bad had happened, and when I told her, she got furious in a way I'd rarely seen her. Like, how dare she show up after all this time and act like she has any rights? Alexander had heard part of the conversation from his room and came down the stairs with that serious expression he had when he was processing something difficult. I told him what had happened, and he just said, "I don't want to see her, period." Lily had a similar reaction the next day when I explained that their mom had called. She shrugged and said, "She's not my mom anymore. Samantha is more my mom than she is." I thought that would be the last time I'd hear from Michelle, but oh no, that would have been too easy. The calls started, the text messages, the emails, all with the same theme, that I'd stolen her life and her children, and that she was going to do whatever was necessary to get back what was hers. She'd gotten Samantha's number at some point, I don't know how she got it, and started sending her messages accusing her of being a home wrecker and a bad influence on her children. Samantha blocked the number. I blocked like 5 different numbers Michelle used, but messages kept coming from new numbers. Then she started with social media, creating fake profiles and trying to add the kids, sending messages to my coworkers trying to cause problems. The straw that broke the camel's back was when she started spreading rumors in the city where we used to live, telling anyone who would listen that I'd cheated on her and thrown her out of the house while she was sick. Some old acquaintances started sending me messages asking what had really happened, and I had to explain the truth over and over, showing the divorce documents and everything. My lawyer told me it was time to get a restraining order, and that's what I did. We collected all the messages, all the calls, all the emails, and filed the papers. Michelle received the notification and sent me one final message from another new number saying this wasn't over, and that she was going to be in her children's lives whether I wanted it or not. Like 3 weeks of blessed silence passed, and I started to think she'd finally gotten the message. Alexander had started college, lived on campus, but came home on weekends, and Lily was in her junior year of high school and already talking about where she wanted to go to study. I had an important dinner with my boss and some potential clients at an Italian restaurant in the city. One of those meetings that can result in a big contract and maybe another promotion. Samantha was coming with me because it was a semi-formal dinner where you were expected to bring your partner, and we got dressed up and arrived at the restaurant like 15 minutes early to be there when my boss arrived. We were sitting at the table. My boss, Robert, and his wife, Janet, had already arrived, and we were in the middle of a conversation about the project when I saw Michelle walking directly toward our table. My brain took like 3 seconds to process what I was seeing because it simply didn't make sense that she was there, at this specific restaurant, on this specific night. She got to the table, and before I could say anything, she turned to Robert and said, "Hi, I'm Michelle, Christopher's wife." The wife, that's how she said it, and I felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on me. Robert looked at me confused, and I tried to explain, "This is my ex-wife. We've been divorced for years." But Michelle interrupted me, saying I had abandoned her for this woman, pointing at Samantha, and that I'd alienated her children from her. The entire table went silent, like that awkward silence where nobody knows what to say or where to look. I told Michelle she had a restraining order against her and needed to leave immediately, and she laughed, literally laughed, and said the order didn't say anything about public restaurants. Samantha stood up, and with a calm that still impresses me, told Michelle that either she left now or she was calling the police. And Michelle started yelling that nobody was going to intimidate her, that these were her children that I'd stolen from her. The restaurant manager appeared with 2 servers and escorted Michelle outside while she kept yelling things about me and Samantha. I sat there feeling like my career had just exploded in front of my eyes, but Robert put a hand on my shoulder and told me not to worry, that it was obvious there was a complicated story there and that he understood. His wife, Janet, was super kind to Samantha, asking if she was okay and apologizing for the scene as if somehow it had been her fault. We finished the dinner, though the atmosphere never quite became completely relaxed again, and when Samantha and I got home that night, I just wanted to get into bed and wake up discovering it had all been a nightmare. I called my lawyer first thing the next day and told him what had happened, and he filed a violation of the restraining order with the restaurant as evidence and the testimonies of Robert and the others who were at the table. Michelle had to appear in court, and the judge warned her that the next violation was going to result in jail time. That was a week ago, and since then I haven't heard anything from her. though honestly, I don't trust that she's given up forever. Alexander told me she'd tried to contact him on Instagram, but that he'd blocked the account without responding, and Lily doesn't even want to hear Michelle's name. Samantha and I were on the couch last night watching a movie after Lily went to sleep, and she asked me if I thought Michelle was ever going to stop trying to insert herself into our lives. I told her I honestly didn't know. That part of me thought eventually she was going to find another guy with money and forget about us again, but that another part of me believed this was going to be a long battle. What I do know is that I'm not going to let her destroy what we've built, this life that cost us so much work to raise from the ashes she left. The kids are fine. They're more than fine, actually, and they have a stable life with people who love them and who will never abandon them for a designer purse. Robert called me on Friday to tell me the contract with the clients had closed and that the restaurant incident hadn't affected their decision. In fact, he said the way Samantha and I handled the situation showed the kind of character he valued in his team. I'm going to get the promotion I was hoping for, and with the raise, we're finally going to be able to finish remodeling the basement, so Alexander has his own space when he comes to visit. Lily asked me yesterday if Michelle was going to show up at her graduation next year, and I told her the truth, that I didn't know, but that if she showed up, we'd be prepared, and she wasn't going to ruin her special day. She thought about it for a moment and then said, "It's okay, Dad. I wouldn't really care if she didn't come." And that answer hurt me a little because part of me still remembers the Michelle from years ago, before everything fell apart, but it also filled me with pride to see how strong my daughter has become despite everything.